This is the second tutorial for finishing up the Crazy 8 in the new Adobe Photoshop CC series. I left off yesterday or the last tutorial with layer 4, which is your portrait, which you erased. Once you're done with that, you're going to click on layer 5. Now layer 5 is supposed to be eraser brushes, and we've found the eraser tool right here, the eraser tool, and we used to be able to right click with the eraser tool and find a lot of eraser brushes, but now there's just a lot of preset brushes. So on this layer, I want you to feel free with playing with these brushes. You can kind of play with some of these painty things, which will erase, or you can scroll down to some dry media brushes and play with what happens with some of these drawing tools, or like chunky charcoal. Or even further down, there's some special effect brushes which allow you to splatter and blend and smear. So I just want you to kind of right click and see that there's more brushes there for layer 5. So do whatever you'd like there. And then you're going to hide layer 5 and click on layer 6, which is your landscape. In this case, what we're going to do is play with pixels. So when you roll way in, I'm going to go back to the move tool, you can see all these pixels. But Photoshop works by you telling it which pixels you want to do something to. When we were erasing or painting, we were just rubbing on those pixels. We're going to select mathematically with this rectangular marquee tool, which can select any way you want: squares, rectangles, thick or thin. Once you select an area, you see these dots that are kind of moving. I call them dancing ants, and everything inside that rectangle will be basically turned on. So whatever you do to it, it will only happen in that rectangle. So if you hit delete on your keyboard, you delete that rectangle and you can see through to your map layer. Control Z will get that image back. If you control D for deselect, you get rid of the ants. Now you can pull in multiple times, but if you make a mistake, control D. If you make a lot of mistakes, like let's say you pull and you delete and you pull and you delete and then you accidentally pull and delete and you can't control Z anymore, you can go to the history palette, pull that open, and step back into space, or time rather. So what I want you to do here is select in rectangles. You can either delete, as I just showed you, or you can use image adjustments, and like you could play with hue saturation and change everything in that strip. You could do multiples of those. So image adjustments, color balance, hue saturation, whatever you'd like to do. Once you've finished there, let's do one more. Once you've finished there, you can control D, hide that layer, and move to layer 7. And on this layer, we're just going to paint. So we had those preset erasers and brushes, but this is your regular paintbrush tool. So when you click it, whatever your last brush was will come up. So we're going to go up to the top and just kind of scroll all the way up to one of these general brushes. When you paint, you'll paint with black. Control Z to step back. You can right click and control the size, just like we have been. You can right click and control the hardness, so it's a little bit sharper. You can also go up to your color palette and pick any new color that you want. Your color appears here. So for this one, I just want you to play with painting. You can completely make that layer disappear if you want. That's totally your call. You can also play with opacity here and make it kind of see-through paint. So for that layer, you're just painting with the paintbrush tool and color. For the last layer, we're going to play with filters. So turn off layer 7 and click on layer 8. Filters, there's a lot of filters. You can go to your filter gallery and you can kind of preview through what it would look like with the filter applied. Cancel. You can go to some of these like filters that sound like what they are, where you can blur and you can increase to make it really blurry. Basically, I just want you to play with these filters and do whatever the heck. Oops, let's not do that one. Whatever the heck you want. So I'm going to go to twirl, because that's fun and easy to see. I'm going to increase my twirl and click OK. Now filters I save for last because they take up a lot of memory. The more filters you apply at once, the more memory gets used in your piece, so be careful. Now you're going to turn on all of your layers. When you do that, you can't see a lot of the layers in between. So your last task is going to be to play with those layers. Remember, you can play with opacity. You can play with blend modes. You can play with opacity on all of the layers. You can erase parts of layers. So if you want to go back to that eraser tool, you can basically do whatever you want. You can move the layers around, so you can drag and drop, do multiple things on one layer. That's completely your call. So the goal and the idea here being that you get to control the outcome by messing with each of these layers. Obviously, there's like multiple different things that could happen depending on where you put what layers, so it's going to take you some time to play around. But when you land on something you like, that has a focal point. So you need to make sure that you can see this focal point pretty well. So I'm going to make sure I can see that person. I'm going to lower the opacity of that layer a little bit. Make sure you can see that focal point pretty well. So that guy, so I'm kind of playing to make sure I can see him better, especially his eyeball. So you can see I've erased away where his head should be, and maybe I will put him, there we go. Well, anyway, I might still play around, but when you feel like you have a result that you like, you're going to go to File, Save, just to resave that file back into Google Drive file stream. Don't forget to double check and make sure it's done saving. And then what you're going to do, because I want you guys to put it in your portfolio, which we're going to make next, we're going to save as, and we're going to save it as a JPEG file. There's several JPEGs, the top JPEG file. Make sure it goes back in your Google Drive, BAT Crazy 8, and you might want to name this Final Crazy 8 and your last name. So I would name mine Gus, obviously. Just in case, sometimes when we share them on Drive, if you all save it as the same name, they bounce each other out. So Final Crazy 8 last name, and then save it. This little box is just an OK. So now in your Google Drive, you should have, bear with me just to double check. You should have, there it is, that JPEG is an image, and then your PSD, your Photoshop, is in there too. So that's what you want to do to finish up the Crazy 8. Remember, you can really do anything you want. Saving one is required for the portfolio. Saving more than one is encouraged. If you want to make multiple versions of this same group of photos, you can. Or if you want to build a whole new one yourself, that's like extra credit. And you would follow these videos to do that. Good luck.